Hi, welcome to Tales of Dread. Tonight we have some true horror stories for you about dogmen and werewolves. So enjoy and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. The first time I saw the dogman, it was just me and my grandma at home. It was a year ago. We live in a small town that is also a city. That night, my mum and dad went hunting. At 11 a.m, I was in my room listening to music and talking on my phone. Someone began to knock on our door. Very strange, because almost no one comes by after 9 p.m. My grandmother was the first one to come to the door. When she went to look, she saw that no one was there. She then opened the door for both of us to look and see that no one was there. We didn't know what was going on, but we thought it was some kids playing around 1 a.m. Comes around pretty fast. I was sitting in my chair and wearing headphones. I kept hearing the sound of something being scratched. I took off my headphones to stop and listen, and then it happened again. It was making marks on the outside of my room. I was a little scared to look out the window, so I didn't hurry to see what was going on. But I had my phone ready to call 911, and before I felt safe flashing a light out my window, I didn't see any prints or other obvious signs of anything. As soon as I closed my blinds and sat down, I heard something run on the roof right above my room, into the front of the house, back up above my room, and out the front of the house. I was shocked when fight or flight took control. As a response, I locked the doors from the top and moved any furniture near the door. My dad left his, 308 in his room, so I took it and went to stay with my grandma until my parents got back. Whatever ran on the roof must have been huge. We've had roofers on our roof before, and they didn't move or step that loudly and heavily. So whatever was running on the roof must have been loud or strong enough for us to hear and feel it in the house. 2:30 a.m. When my parents got home, they pulled into the driveway, and I helped them in. I put everything back while I told them what had happened. At first, my mum didn't want to talk, and my dad looked pale and upset. When I told my mum about the scratching outside, she told me that when they were driving by the hydropower lines, a large animal that looked like a wolf ran past them and went behind a big rock. They thought they had hurt the animal and might have to help kill it. But as soon as they pulled over, the father pulled out his gun. The wolf looked at them from behind the rock and growled. This time it didn't look the same. It looked bad and was standing up. This time they looked down. My dad pulled the trigger and hit it in the chest with the shot. Behind the rock, it went down. After that, though my dad worried about my mum and himself. He decided not to check to see if it was done, so he got back in the truck and held down the gas pedal all the way back to town and all the way home. What's weirdest to me is that whatever it is, it's been back in town recently. People have been finding large wolves like prints in their yards, and a neighbour said something was standing and looking through their living room window a month ago. I first heard about a French werewolf 10 years ago in a small town outside of Toulouse, France. While waiting for a restaurant to open, a large group of American family members walked up a hill to look at the town graveyard. As we walked back along the road, we could see the whole town below us. The streetlight lit up the stone walls in front of the houses about 100 yards ahead of us. I saw a huge black dog-shaped thing leave our sidewalk, walk into the middle of the street, stand up on its hind legs, and quickly climb and disappear over the 8-foot stone wall across the street. There were cars, bushes, and gates for scale, and this thing was about 7 to 8 feet tall. Think of the werewolf from the movie Prisoner of Azkaban. My son says, yeah, that was a werewolf. A minute later, when we walked by, everyone was laughing at us. But whatever, it doesn't matter to me if you believe me or not, was the serious, straightforward way I was told I might have seen a wolfman in the fall of 2013. At this point, my longtime friend Andrew told me about not just one, but 2 separate times when he saw strange 2-legged creatures hunting game near Norton, Ohio. Andrew usually works night shifts, so he is used to driving on quiet, dark roads every day. One cold fall night, I was driving along Johnson Road, which goes by Silver Creek Metro Park. What he saw was not normal in any way, about 50 yards from the place where Medina Line Road meets. When 2 deer ran across the road going south, he stopped his car. But what they were running from was what caught his attention. I would say they are between 6 and 7 apostrophes tall. The 2 deer, which were both smaller, were chased across the street and into the woods. They ran in a line, with one deer in front and the other two behind. About 30 to 40 yards stood between them and the deer. They walked on two legs and were very strong and fast, like lightning. It all happened in a very short amount of time. I couldn't say anything about it. Because it was very dark, I'm guessing it was either a new moon or cloudy, but they were definitely a dark colour, maybe chocolate brown or black. I asked him for more information because Bigfoot has been seen in Ohio. People say that Bigfoot runs like a human and has long arms that swing when it moves. They weren't Bigfoot, and I can't say how they moved, but less than a month later they didn't move like people. Andrew was driving home on Johnson Road when something ran in front of his car as he passed a moonlit cornfield. I don't know the exact heights of the cornstalks in the fields, but I do know that they were taller than me by a head, and I'm 6 feet tall. This time, I only caught a quick glimpse of two animals because there was no open land nearby. They left the road when they broke the corn, landed about 10 to 15 feet into the field on the other side, and kept running. This time, the pair I saw in the moonlight was black, and the other was black with white or silver on its chest and back. Since the first three I saw were all one solid colour, that means there must be at least 4 different creatures. On October 11, 2014, I went with Andrew and his wife to look for signs that what he saw might still be around. Silver Creek Metro Park is to the south of where the first sighting took place. There are 3 or 4 houses and a big field behind them on the other side of the road. Andrew pointed out that the creatures he saw went through the field and by the houses the night he saw them. This shows that they don't seem to be afraid of being near people. The second sighting was in a very remote area on a small hill between 2 large fields. Both places are not only close to each other, but they are also close to Silver Creek. We were going to look for wolfmen-like creatures in Silver Creek Metro Park, but when we got there at dusk, there were bonfires and hundreds of people celebrating the second annual fall family outing. This made it hard to look for wolfmen-like creatures. A second trip is still planned for this winter, if all goes well. There may be more witnesses, but it's easy to see why they wouldn't want to come forward. If you saw big, dark things running on 2 feet, you might think that people would think you were crazy. But there is a story from a long time ago that may give these sightings more credibility. In the book, Linda by Godfrey, there are real wolfmen. The Persistent Chicken Thief is the name of a story from 2010. Godfrey is put in touch with a family on pages 262 to 27. After a number of strange things happened on their farm, their son, Drew, saw a large, dark creature over 6 feet tall hiding in the trees. In March, the single rooster started to crow and the animal let out a loud growl. Then all went silent. Drew heard what sounded like something jumping back over the fence, and the rooster squealed as if it hurt. Drew grabbed a gun and a flashlight and ran outside. From the front porch, he looked over the fence with his light and saw the rooster, but it looked like it had something dark over its middle. Drew slowly realized that the dark thing was the head of an animal with 2 bright eyes. He said that whatever it was, it seemed to look right through me. It made my blood run cold, and I couldn't move because I was so scared. I go hunting. I'm used to being out in nature and seeing big animals. Those animals don't scare me as much as this thing does. When I first saw it, I had the feeling it was going to hurt me. After looking into something I've never believed in, I'm sure this thing is a dogman. For many months, the family heard loud howls and the sound of something walking on 2 legs in the gravel driveway. The family kept a detailed diary of the strange things that happen, but Godfrey has lost touch with them since. Even though no one knows for sure where the farm is, it is close to Norton, Ohio. In May 2010, Kristen Miller from Wadsworth saw a big cat with a long tail that looked like a mountain lion at dusk in Silver Creek Metro Park. She told park officials about what she saw. There have also been reports of black bears in the area, but neither of these animals can run on 2 feet, nor are they even close to being 9 to 7 feet tall. Silver Creek flows into Wolf Creek, which is a good name for it. Ohio used to have a lot of timber wolves in the past. As early settlers started farming, though, these furry dogs became less of a welcome part of the wild and more of a problem. As the animals hunted and killed many sheep, thousands of Ohio wolves were killed by being shot, trapped, or poisoned. The last Ohio wolf was killed in 1842, marking the end of the wolf's time in the state. Even though wolves are no longer in Ohio, maybe something much scarier has moved in. What's going on with Silver Creek? Wolfman isn't solved yet by a long shot. I think my investigation is still going on. Anyone who has seen something similar or found something that might be proof of these creatures can get in touch with me at kennedyaffordedmag.com. When I was 6 years old and going to primary school in South Africa, there was a sort of valley between the main building and a retaining wall. At the end of the valley was a storage room, and desks and chairs were stacked in front of the doors, probably because they were being moved in or out. We saw what I thought was a dogman with a friend. Before school started, we were playing near the entrance to the alley. One of us saw movement behind the stacked desks, and when we both looked, we saw a creature with the head of a black dog or wolf and the body of a man. Its glowing green eyes scared us. It stood on all fours and then on its hind legs to watch us from behind the desks. It alternated between completely hiding itself from our view and peeking up at us through the spaces in the desks. Me and the other kids stood there motionless for a few minutes as this thing watched us from the end of the alley. Finally, one of us woke up and pulled the other away, which made us both run away. After we told other people, no one seemed to believe us or the other child. I've never seen anything like this animal before. Again, I'm a bit of a skeptic, and the things I just told you seem impossible, so a part of me thinks this is just a false memory that I managed to convince myself was real. But a part of me still doesn't understand why the memory feels so real that I can't tell it apart from other memories from my childhood that I know for sure happened. I just moved to a neighborhood with gates near a lake. I was getting used to seeing the moon over the lake from a small patio that everyone shared. Even though the light was broken, it didn't feel dark because of the moonlight. As I got closer, I saw a mix of people bending like dogs. I swam. It was just a big robot. I didn't yet know, so I told him I was there. "What's up, neighbor gig? I'm just moved next door. Just stopped by to see where the moon was." I was going to leave right away because I didn't want to bother anyone. Then the neighbor got up and started running. It was a towel, and the arms were long enough to reach his knees. I didn't like that. But when he turned around, he had a face like a dog, with pointy ears and a scary smirk that I will never forget. Fur covered the skin, but you could share some skin. I didn't know what to say or do, so I just stood there until I heard my partner come. I ran up to her and told her she had to share. In less than 5 seconds, she grabbed my soda and turned to look at the lake. It was no longer there, never to be seen nagging. First of all, I don't know if this was a real dogman or not, but after taking part in some of Linda Godfrey's research and getting interested in werewolves again like I did when I was a kid, I thought there were some strange coincidences. Before life and responsibilities got in the way, my brother and I used to go to this mountain creek in southwest Virginia. It backs up on the Jefferson National Forest, and from what I can see on Google Earth, it's a pretty quiet place. The road leading up to it ends abruptly, but it turns into a long, overgrown and broken down road along the creek. We found that this road led to a beautiful swimming hole with boulders, where we would hang out and have a few drinks and cigarettes. You had to walk by a coal mine that had been closed for a long time and had big piles of mine rubble. One day, we were surprised when a big scruffy dog that looked like a cross between a wolf and a German shepherd slid out of the mine. Dana Lee came over to us with a big smile. We were hesitant. They had rabies, but they seemed to know it and sort of said hello to us before following us to our spot. We thought it was strange that a stray was in the middle of the woods, but we just laughed it off and let him hang out with us while he fished and we drank beer. The next few times we went out there, he would be hanging out there. He would be hanging out there, sliding down the coleslaw. So we called him Mr. Croy, which is a family name. We had noticed that there was an abandoned cemetery nearby. As we got to know each other better, he just sat there while we hung out on the rocks. The only problem was that he smelled like rotting sulfur, but he was our friend. So we just let it slide. We also noticed that he seemed strangely human, especially in the way he moved and talked. So Mr. Croy became a puzzle for his family. We would joke about being our drinking buddy. We even tried to get him to come home with us, but he wouldn't go past this grove of big dead hemlock trees. When spring came the next year, we decided to go out there to see our coal mine friend, but we couldn't find him anywhere. He had a heavy gait, and you could hear it thumping as something followed us. We looked at each other and saw that there was nothing there, so we decided it was nothing and sat down. Our buddy was gone. We kept walking to our spot, but we could still hear heavy footsteps behind us. We were talking and sipping beer when we noticed a strong smell of rotten eggs. We talked to him, and by that time, we were getting strange feelings. We were a little scared to get back to the car. We didn't really go there. Then his life got in the way, and he started dating while I went to work. We tried to go back a few years ago, but there was some kind of white supremacist camp at the entrance that made us feel too uncomfortable to go any further. We still talk about it whenever our mysterious dog friend from the wilderness comes up. This meeting took place in May of 1989. On a school trip, we went to see the ruins of an old Sandinista outpost that was important politically. In Nicaragua, it is near a town called Granada. We were a group of 27 kids, and each of our parents gave us special permission to go there. I happened to notice that there were houses near the historical site. They were on the hills of a mountain, which is where I foolishly went to look for them. The houses were made of wood and were old. About 60 yards separated them from the historical site. As I passed the first house, an old man came out and asked me why I wasn't with my group. I asked him why he cared. He said in an angry voice, "There are things out here that will take you away. Our country is wild, but only if you travel in the mountains, rivers, lakes, or by the sea." So I didn't care what he said. It was about 5:30 at night, and I was about 100 yards away from the historical site. We were supposed to meet at the bus to leave as soon as the teacher blew her whistle. I was sitting by the tree line and eating a sandwich when I heard a clear sound from behind me. It was a growling sound that shook my nerves to the core. I turned around right away to see if anything was coming toward me. I heard the teacher's whistle all of a sudden. I thought I had about 2 or 3 minutes to climb the tree and look around to see if I could see anything. So I did. What I saw crawling on the forest floor made no sense at all. It was a man who was lying on the ground 80 or 100 feet into the woods. His body was shaking like it was in a lot of pain. I could see that his back was sweaty, and as he jerked, he turned his face toward me. I could see that his eyes were red and that his nose was literally turning black and getting longer. I quickly got down from the tree, grabbed my bag, and ran to the bus stop. It looks like I was the last one to get back. As the bus started moving, I said a prayer that this monster that roams the land wouldn't hurt me. The next day, I asked my grandpa about what I had seen. He was born and raised there. His father was a coffee farmer, which is something my country still trades with the US for. He said that the locals had a curfew and that they never went out to pick coffee without a gun. He also said that they thought they were both animals and people, so they worshipped the devil and traded their souls so they could change into different animals like the great wolf spirit. I have to tell you that when we moved to the US, I thought I was done with monsters, but it turns out I was wrong. I am in Austin, Texas, and have been here since 1996. I tell people I know not to go into the woods alone and not to wear bright colours. At the very least, I think they should bring a gun or bear pepper spray, but I won't take chances again. This will make no sense. I live in a really small town in eastern Oregon, and I don't think a dogman has ever been seen around here. Lots of people have seen Bigfoot, but not this beast. I called it crazy because I was high when I saw it, and a lot of people think that when you're high, you can see things. I think that's both true and false. It is a medicine that helps with depression and headaches caused by glaucoma. I put that because it's possible that I did make that up. But holy crap, am I still scared last night. I finished a couple of college papers hours after what happened, and as I was writing them, I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. I turned to my window, where the blinds are down but not folded, so I could see a little bit through them. I could have sworn that something moved to the corner of my room on the left side of my house. So I didn't freak out. I thought it was an owl or something. I shut the blinds and go into my house's kitchen to get something to drink. At night, the only light you can see is from the lighthouse, which kind of works like a floodlight. The other source would be the moonlight or Christmas lights. I didn't want to turn on anything because I didn't want to wake my parents up. So I took everything off while I went to the sink faucet to get a drink of water. When I went outside, I saw that something was standing behind our Christmas tree. I know it wasn't a person because it was almost as tall as the tree, which is about 1 meter or 6 to 7 feet. I think I stopped moving because I could see two of them. Yes, it made me think of my dog because when you shined a light on them, it made my skin crawl. I wanted to scream and yell at this thing to get it out of my house. The eyes blinked a few times, but then they just looked at me. I couldn't get a good look at its face, even when I turned on the kitchen light. I couldn't even tell what I was seeing until I went to the sliding screen door that leads to the living room. I guess that thing was staring at me or something, because I walked over to see if the light reflected anything and got a lot more than I expected. I saw long, thin legs and a very thin body, and the nose was the last thing I could make out. I haven't heard any Bigfoot around here with a long snout. I tried to take pictures, but it was too dark to see much, even with the light from the kitchen reflecting off of it. My phone could only make out a vague shape, which could easily be mistaken for a tree. I tried using the flash, but it didn't work. I think I scared it away that way or something. After a minute or less of it staring at me in the living room, I went to the kitchen. It turned around, got on all fours, and ran into an open field. I didn't have the courage to go outside, so I stayed in the bathroom, where there is a small window that is cracked open. I could hear some cows and horses going crazy. I'm used to hearing coyote noises when the horses or cows in the area neigh or get upset, but not this time. This time, they were freaking out. What looked like it was over? Nothing. I've never heard cows or horses so upset when winter is so close. I wanted to show that this was not true, because one of my friends did it as a joke. But the only friend I have here lives just a few blocks away, and he would have to wait at that tree until about 2 a.m. to see if I got up to go to the bathroom or get something to drink. This subreddit had a video of a dogman looking through a screen window, and his eyes were the same as those of this creature. I joined this subreddit out of the blue last night because I've always been interested in this thing. I saw it myself. It's creepy, and I don't want it following me around when I'm up late. So yeah, that's what happened to me last night. This happened in Eastern Oregon, where I have never heard of a dogman. I hope it was just a one-time deal. If you don't, you'll get clapped. I live in the country in northern Indiana. My brother and his friend and I went camping in the woods near a lake. I couldn't sleep, but everyone else was, so I was up taking care of the fire and walking around the campsite when I thought I heard a howl. And there are a lot of coyotes around here. Because they are so common, I know how they act, how they sound, and everything else about them. And I heard a howl that couldn't have been made by a coyote or a dog. It went a long way. We don't have wolves up here, so it could only have been a wolf. I have a sneaking suspicion that I may have known the dogman, Skunk Ape, because my dad told me this story took place in the late 1990s and early 2000s. My dad was in the Navy, and when this story took place, he was home on leave. This happened in the Allegheny National Forest, which is out in the country in Pennsylvania. I don't know if this is important or not, but there is a Native American reservation just north of our town. My dad was driving with an old high school friend to see him, and they were on a very empty road surrounded by woods. As they drove, the road was cut into a giant, very steep hill that was covered with huge, tall evergreen trees. Then, all of a sudden, a small black figure jumps 40 feet from the top of the hill and lands right in front of the car. They hadn't stopped yet, and they were about to hit the dead body. Just as they were about to hit it, though, it jumped up, went over the guardrail and went down the hill. It seems that both of them saw it, but didn't know it. So they both kept quiet because they didn't want to look like they were crazy. Then my dad's friend said, "Dude, was that a monkey?" My dad says, "I don't know. I thought I was just seeing things." My dad said that all he could see was that it looked like a chimpanzee, except that its hair was much longer, ratty, and wet, and that it hung down from its arm. He didn't catch any other glimpses. After a few years, when the internet came along, he learned about the skunk ape. He still thinks it was a skunk ape to this day. Any thoughts? I'm really interested in werewolves. It all started when I saw one in front of me. He followed me on a trail, but I barely got away. This didn't happen in Achibaba, but in another city in the state of Sao Paulo called Achibaya. There is at least one pack of werewolves that is making people afraid. There are cases and reports on YouTube. One of them talks about an ex-communist leader who turned into a beast a few years ago. I thought it was interesting to put this information in a coup by saying that the situation is bad. There is a certain neighborhood where no one walks the streets at night. The neighborhood called Tank or Tank's neighborhood. I can give you links to videos in Portuguese if you want. Within 30 to 40 minutes of the NJ border, there are a few interesting things to see in New York State. Most people don't know that the northern tip of New Jersey has a lot of mountain wilderness to hunt in. I hunt all the time in Sussex County, New Jersey. Even though I've never seen anything, I had a strange experience while scouting in the early fall. Most of the time when I go into the woods, I see bears. I know how to handle them, so they don't scare me. But 4 years ago, I was scouting. Before I knew about Dogman, my friend and I came across this square boulder. The top was flat as could be. I've never seen a rock in nature that looked like that. Just over the next ridge, I found a raised plateau that was like nothing I'd ever seen before. It looked almost like an altar. There are many hills up there, but this part of the woods was completely flat, and there was a big hill in the middle that was about 20 feet tall, 10 feet wide, and maybe 10 feet long. I went to the top to see how the shooting lanes might look from there. I started to feel crazy paranoid. I'd say the opposite, but I didn't know about dogmen at the time, so I felt like I was being followed. I started to worry that there was a bear nearby, but I couldn't get rid of the fear. I thought it was getting worse and worse, so much so that I started to worry. I was afraid that a bear would come out of nowhere and attack me at any time. This doesn't make sense. As I don't mind bears and have seen hundreds of them in the woods, I don't have any fear of them. I couldn't get rid of that feeling until we were almost a mile away on our hike. It turned out that the whole valley we were in was a main vein that a well-known Indian tribe used to watch over. I think what we found was a place where ceremonies took place. There's no real proof of that, just a gut feeling. What an interesting hill in the middle of nowhere. At least in modern TMA, there is no way it was made by people. I still think about how I felt back then. I never saw or heard anything, but I've never felt so scared that I thought I was going to be eaten. I haven't been back to that spot since, and that hill we found would have been a great place to hide while hunting. I'm in quasi-rural East Jersey. My childhood friend from the next block swears that he and another friend saw a strange creature with long, skinny arms in the corner of his yard near the woods. It was paying close attention as they played. Both of them ran to the house. As a fun side note, the house was also said to have a lot of ghosts. So it was a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situation. They might have seen a dogman or other cryptid. Okay, so I know that technically there's knows about cryptids in Michigan, like what I saw besides the dogman, which isn't supposed to be near me, but the other night around 3 a.m., I was walking down the road when I saw a group of deer run across the road and then right behind them. This big animal came out of the woods. It was about the size of a deer, but its head was on its shoulders instead of its neck. It was also much too big to be a coyote or a dog. It ran past a light, and I could see that it was dark black, like the colour of its skin. I say skin because this thing looked more like leather than fur. It also cleared the main road in about 2 steps. Boom, boom, gone. We don't have any of these things. Bears, moose, wolves, buffalo, or anything else that looks like this. And I know for sure that it wasn't a deer. A few years ago, my good friend and his friend were driving near Carlsbad, New Mexico, when they saw a dog on the side of the road eating roadkill. About 20 to 30 feet after passing it, they stopped so my friend could get out and get a better look. When he got closer, the dog stood up on its hind legs and walked towards him. So he got back in the car. His friends saw it too, and one of them yelled, "Go, motherfucking go!" They drove away, and they never saw it again. He said that it was standing near a sign, and that the top of its head reached the top of the sign. The next day, he went back and measured how far it went on the sign. He said it was 9 feet tall. He thought it looked a lot like the werewolf in the movie The Howling. I've known him for more than 10 years, and he's never lied to me or made things up before telling me about something he saw. I didn't think there was anything like that. My most recent meeting was today. On my way to work in the morning, I saw something very scary. I don't usually believe in the supernatural, but I'll be damned if that animal I saw on my way to work was just a normal one. I often take a small road that goes through a wooded area. The road is pretty long and mostly straight. Around 4:30 a.m., I left my house. I was driving along minding my own business and slowly waking up when I saw what I thought was a very large dark grey or black dog sitting next to the road. Since it was still dark, I couldn't see it in full detail, so I slowed down in case it tried to run across the road. But when I got closer and the headlights showed it in full, it just stood up and walked into the bushes next to the road. But when it stood up, it was clear that it wasn't a normal dog. It was at least as big as a bear, maybe even bigger. I'd say its back legs were shorter, its front legs were very strong, and it had an oddly long nose, pointy ears, and a bushy tail. It almost walked like a hyena, but it was always on all fours. Big predators are rarely seen in this area, and when they are, it's usually just a lone wolf, or once every 2 years or so, a bear. This stretch of road has always given me the creeps, but now I know what to be afraid of. I'd noticed that there were no other animals around in the last few days. Usually I can always see deer, foxes, or even a badger if I'm lucky, but this week I haven't seen anything, not even a bird. Some animals had also been reported missing in this area. Last week 2 sheep went missing, and yesterday a horse went missing. Later it was found torn apart badly and partially eaten. I don't know if the mysterious dog creature did this, but I was pretty sure it did. It happened in the summer of 2015. My then girlfriend and I had a few days off work and had been enjoying the summer. And on the last night of our trip, we wanted to spend a romantic evening about 20 miles away from our home. It is a pretty valley with a clear, cold river running through it. In the stream, there are a few small islands with a bit of brush and a few small trees on them. The river isn't too deep, so you can walk through it. Tourists don't know much about it, so it's great for some few activities. We love to go skinny dipping there, and that's what we had planned to do. It didn't go quite the way we planned. The first part of the night actually went pretty well. We found a nice place, set up a small camp, spread out some blankets, lit some candles, and did stuff like go skinny dipping. We were tired, so we decided to go to bed and wrapped ourselves in blankets. That was when it began. We were there the whole time. There were always animals around, and we could hear them calling like deer, foxes, and owls. Just the usual night sounds until they stopped. Nothing. There was nothing but the sound of the water running over the rocks. That was the first time we heard it. There was a howl, but no wolf. It was a deep, rumbling sound that made the ground shake and seemed to shake every bone in my body. It was really scary. My girlfriend was as shaken as I was. I spent all of my childhood outside. I grew up on a farm with my parents and in the woods nearby, so I know every kind of animal that lives there. I know what a deer calls, what a fox says, what a wolf howls, and what a bear roars, but I've never heard anything like this before, and I never want to hear it again. We suddenly decided that my bed at home is better than this riverbed for sleeping. We got up, packed our things, and got on the road. That's the second time we heard it. The same howl, deep rumbling, shaking, and then a deep growl, whatever was making this noise. It was big and we didn't want to meet it. I still had about 2 miles to go before I could get to my car. We had to cross the river twice to get to the bank, where the trail through the woods to my car began. We thought we saw and heard something else crossing the river with us as we did. I brought a small flashlight, and when we got to the riverbank, I used it to show what we saw. Made our knees get weak. On the other side of the river, a big animal was standing, dark with sharp ears, a very muscular body, and a head that looks almost like a German shepherd's. But what scared us the most was that its orange/yellow glowing eyes seemed to be fixed on us. We booked it. All the way back to my car, we ran. We could hear it rushing through the river, but we couldn't hear it anymore, so it must have stopped at the bank. After we went into the woods, we got back to our car safely and decided not to go back. I haven't been back there since then, at least not at night. Man with a dog in Scotland. My uncle used to live in a part of Scotland that was pretty far away. He's not the kind of person who makes things up or is easy to scare. I don't know much about it, and I can't ask him about it, so I can only do this much. He was driving on a dark, empty country road in the fall or winter. As he was driving, he saw something that looked like a huge black dog, but didn't look natural at all on the side of the road. We don't have wolves here, and it wasn't a regular dog. This was a big thing. Could it be something like meeting a dogman or a werewolf in Pullman, Washington? I didn't know about this forum until recently. After spending some time here reading similar stories, I've decided to tell you about my encounter with a humanoid, to add it to the list of people who have gone through similar things, since I haven't spent much time looking into things like this. I don't know how to put the being I met into a category, so any ideas about what it was would be helpful. I'll tell the story in as much detail as I can so that we can all remember it, but I'll warn you now. It's not very exciting, and it starts and ends with me seeing a shadowy figure that looks like a wolfman and trying to avoid it. The meeting took place between 5 and 8 p.m. on February 2, 2016, in Washington, Pullman. I lived in Pullman and worked at Washington State University to get my master's degree. I know the exact date because I write bad poetry as a habit or hobby. So when a phrase I want to remember came to mind, I wrote it down in the notes on my phone. And this is true. I'm afraid to walk alone because I'm afraid I'll meet the devil on the road. I had actually forgotten about this strange part of the story, which, looking back, is probably the part that is the hardest to explain. As it seems, the meeting was more than just a coincidence. Pullman is a small college town that is very easy to get around on foot if you already know the area. I walked to campus every day from Lamont Street on Military Hill, down the walking biking path, and mostly up College Hill via Stadium Way. So I would walk down a hill, through a valley on a bike path, up a welded hill, and into a college campus. It would take me about 45 minutes. Some other important things to know about Pullman are that it is very remote, surrounded by rolling wheat fields with almost no trees left, is very simple, and is only inhabited by people from nearby towns and college students. Any time of year, the sun sets early, but college students getting drunk in the summer is not very common. Far from College Hill, where the encounter happened, it's not a big enough town to have homeless people, and there aren't many drifters. To get to the point, I walked home that night in the dark, as I had done hundreds of times before, when I got to the bottom of the street I lived on, where the bike path would lead up to Grand Avenue, a nearby road. I saw the shape of a human-like creature crouching in the path ahead of me. Even though the road is somewhat lit, the bike path is down a small berm from the road and is very dim from about 60 feet away. I started to feel scared because I couldn't see much of the form. When I was about 30 to 40 feet away from the crouching figure, I stopped. I think if the figure was wearing clothes or had any kind of human skin, it would have caught more light. Instead, it looked too big to be a person, with a back that was too curved and a head that was too far forward. Even though I didn't see any proof that it was four, the context made it clear to me that it was four. My mind went through all the possibilities, and nothing made sense if it was human. It was a very tall man who was hunched over on the road back, as if he were balling himself up. If it wasn't, it looked like a human, which is something most people don't believe exists. Those are the only two real choices. I felt like I had to fight or run away. I said, "Hey," at a normal volume, and the form moved 2 or 3 times. It seemed to be turning its head either toward me or away from me. I didn't see any eyes or lights catch it. It just looked like a hunched-over, crouched humanoid in the middle of a bike path at night. It was too big to be a person whose high school didn't try to get him to play basketball, and maybe it was a drunk basketball player half a mile from campus, but maybe not. I was torn between the thought that I might be seeing something amazing and the fear that I might not be able to live through the moment. I guess one is that I immediately climbed up the slope to the road, crossed the road, and walked the rest of the way home on the other side because of the difference in height. I couldn't see the shape anymore because it was dark and because of the berm. I walked up the hill to my apartment, locked the door, and thought about the bad poem line I had written earlier as I sat in my living room. I wondered if someone or something bad was following me, and if they would keep looking for me. There was nothing else. It turned into a funny story, I told my town friends. I don't know if the details of this story will help anyone, but I wanted to share them anyway. It really happened. It took place. Even if it was a person, I don't know how to explain it. A stressed-out graduate student may have written the note, which is a strange coincidence. Hallucinated to find out if I saw a man with a dog. So this happened a few years ago, but my mum and I both remember every detail. I would like some advice though, because I was almost certain I saw a skinwalker, but the place doesn't make sense. So, when I was in 7th or 8th grade, my mum and I were driving home from therapy. It wasn't for being schizoid or anything like that. just for depression and other things. I know it was winter and a full moon because the snow was lit up by the moonlight. Even though it was only 6, it was very dark because it was winter. We were going about 55 mph when this thing crossed in front of us and stopped. I can only say that it looked like a cross between a deer, a dog, and a person. It was about as tall as our windshield. It had legs that reminded me of a deer's. It walked on all fours and had a hunched back. It looked like a dog, but its eyes were white and it had no tail. The skin of this creature was the most strange thing about it. It wasn't a dog with mange or anything like that, and its legs were too long to be those of a dog. In some places, it smelled like rotten meat. The skin was split open like when you scrape your knee. It was pale white and you could see its veins. This thing was so fast that it just stood there and ran across the road. My mum and I had to stop the car to calm down. Both of us saw it. This was seen in the southeastern part of Ohio, between Gallup and Athens. I haven't seen the creature since, but it still scares me, and I don't want to drive on that highway at night. Does anyone know what I saw? Thank you ahead of time. The werewolf who was good. We recently went to see The Wolf of Snow Hollow with my husband, and I was telling my in-laws how much fun it was while talking about werewolves. I told them this story over the weekend, and it scared them. Years ago, I worked as kennel staff at a veterinary clinic. We had a place for dogs to stay, and I often worked on the weekends to make sure the dogs got fed, walked, and cleaned up after. The job was pretty fun. One weekend we had 2 big huskies staying with us in retrospect. One of them was especially tall and fluffy, so I don't know if it was a Malamute or a mud dog or something else. No matter what, they were good dogs that didn't poop or pee in their kennel. They played outside great and were very friendly with me. They were, in a word, well behaved. On Monday, their owners came to get them because big dogs can be dangerous. We could only bring 1 dog from the kennels to the front lobby at a time. I did what they said and picked up the smaller one first. Before I go on, I need to explain how the kennel is set up. So the next part makes sense. The part of the kennel room where we kept the bigger dogs was against the far wall. These were about 15x 15 foot indoor runs, and both huskies stayed together in one of them over the weekend. The walls were about 15 feet high and made of stainless steel, which made them easy to clean. The front wall of the kennel was made of a special type of reinforced glass, so you could see the whole thing from outside. At the vet clinic, there was only one other person working, and he was about 5 and tall. So I brought out the first dog, and there was a lot of happy barking and husky talk. Whoever has owned a husky knows what I mean. When the dog was reunited with its family, I brought up the second dog. Its tail was wagging, and it seemed happy in general. The owners didn't say much to me besides thanks and have a good day, and they didn't stay long when they got their dogs back. We usually had the owners pay before we brought the dogs up from the kennels, so they didn't have to juggle their wallets and an excited dog. I went back to the kennels to clean up and get them ready for the next group of dogs. I grabbed the disinfectant spray bottle and got ready to clean the walls. That's when I saw it. About 14 feet above me, on the back wall, was a handprint that wasn't the usual size. When you looked at it, it was huge. I was really scared. So I got the handprint off the stainless steel. Using a multi-step stool to move quickly, I'm 16.5 inches tall. When I told my co-workers, who are vet techs, about it, they were also scared and told me not to talk about it again. I was the only one working in the kennels that morning. Between bringing up the last dog and going back to the kennels, there wasn't enough time for our only male employee to run in, jump up, and leave a single handprint. Later, I asked him if he'd ever been in kennels, and he said no. Around that time, he was doing intake in a vet room, and as I said, the handprint was too big to be from a normal-sized person. That's how I ended up taking care of a well-behaved werewolf for the weekend. My friend and her family have heard in Tennessee. At their home in the mountains, stones are falling down. They live about an hour from Gatlinburg in a fairly remote area. She said it didn't happen at a certain time, but the sound of the rocks clicking 2 or 3 times every few minutes was too consistent to be something in the woods moving or settling. It scared me a lot, her clan. We were in a field near our cabin, about the distance of a sprint. We spent the whole time looking at the stars and enjoying the coolness in our bones. I feel like I'm being watched, and I hear this clicking sound. I finally got my friend's attention to see if they could hear it, and sure enough, the sound was louder and closer than before, but we couldn't see anything. Whatever was making that noise sounded like it was right in front of us, but we couldn't see or smell anything. I know that smell is often used to explain a lot of different things. We could only hear stones clicking, and since we couldn't see what was making the noise, our fear grew. We decided it was time to go back inside, but it was hard to go to sleep. But once we were all comfortable, we were all as bright as a broken light. The rest of the trip was a lot of fun. Then, as we said our goodbyes and left, we couldn't help but feel like something or someone would miss us. At the very least, I knew I'd miss that place. So beautiful and peaceful. So I'm very happy to be coming back soon to this place, where I had the scariest night of my life. Very possible Dogman encounter before I get started. I just want to say that this is a true story that happened to me and a group of friends back in early July. This is not a way to get people's attention in any way. The things you're about to read may sound like the plot of a horror story, but they really happened to me one night. I'm not an avid poster, so sorry if the post isn't good enough for Reddit. Lowell, I've been getting the nerve to write about my experience for a while now. It's quite long, but I think it will be worth your time. Please don't be too hard on me in the comments, since I don't post very often. So, my friends and I go to my friend's house just outside of Traverse City, Michigan, about 5 to 10 times a year. We usually stay between 3 and 5 days at a time. This time, there were 6 of us guys, and we were all between 23 and 24 years old. All of this happened on our first night there. So, we get there around 8 p.m. When we get there, we drink a few beers, play some card games, listen to music, and just talk nonsense. The night goes on, and my friend, who owns the place, and another guy go to sleep around midnight. The rest of us, 4, decide to have a little bonfire. Bonfires are one of our favourite things to do up there, because at night we can usually see every star in the sky, lots of shooting stars, and what we think are UFOs. We just talk and tell stories around the fire. One of the guys with us had only been there once before, and it was in the winter, so he hadn't been able to do any nighttime outdoor activities. So we made sure he saw the sky and other things. So the property is up on a steep hill with woods all around. The woods behind the house aren't very thick, and you can see the winding road that leads up to the hilly neighborhood. Just past the road is a main road and then Lake Michigan, all of which can be seen from the back of the house. The main level has a walkout balcony deck with stairs that lead to the bonfire pit, which is to the right of the house. So, we each get a beer and go down there. When we get there, the first thing we notice is that the moon is full. It was hard to miss because the trees made it look like a spotlight was shining on us around the bonfire. We were talking and looking up at the sky around the bonfire, and we kept talking about how bright the moon was. One of my friends says to the guy who has only been up there once before, let's just call him the new guy, "Have you heard of the man with the dogs? Around the campfire up there, we always make jokes about the Dogman. If you haven't heard of the Michigan Dogman, he is a story that has been passed down through the years. Even a song was written about it and played on the radio in northern Michigan a long time ago." So, after he said that, I had this weird feeling, like I was being watched, and I kept hearing things behind me. Before that, my back was to the woods, and my friend's back was to the house. The other two were in the middle, with their backs to the stairs leading up to the deck and their faces to the steep hill with the thinner woods. Anyway, they were all laughing about the Dogman, and I thought, nah, I don't want to joke about that tonight. So one friend says to the other, "You should play in the Dogman song." And I said out loud, "I don't think that's a good idea. Let's not get him up here," half jokingly, but not really. They play the song and we all laugh, but I'm still hearing strange noises in the background that aren't just branches breaking or chipmunks running around. I thought it sounded like a bigger animal, and I could tell the new guy also heard it. At this point, it's about 2 a.m, and they're all talking about scary stories and the supernatural, while I'm pretty quiet, even though I'm usually the talkative one in the group. I keep hearing things, and I'm getting scared. The new guy is telling a scary story from his own life, and I hear a big sound right behind me. Someone or something was walking, so I finally speak up and say, "Guys, I'm hearing things." They sort of look at me and then keep telling the story. I hear it again, but I didn't say anything. I kind of just shone the light from my phone down the hill to my right. Nothing was there. Even after a few minutes, they still want to hear a story. While I'm trying to stay calm, I hear the noise again, and this time it's louder. I tell the guys to shut up because I think I hear something big. They stop talking and listen, but they don't hear anything. I'm looking back and forth from right behind me to right in front of me, and all of a sudden I see something huge walking. I couldn't tell exactly what shape it was, but the head almost looked like a deer's, but with a shorter nose and a wider, rounder head. It was walking straight away from me, parallel to me and the guy on the other side, but about 20 feet to the right on the steep decline, there were bushes right on top of the hill in front of the bonfire, and its head was well above them. The next day, I stood in the same place, but I couldn't see over the bushes and in 5, 10 or whatever it was. It wasn't looking at me, it was just facing the way it was going. I couldn't tell, but there could have been more than one. I looked at it, got scared as hell, grabbed all my stuff, and started yelling at my friends. I saw something just now. When I went upstairs, I just saw something. We all ran as fast as we could up the stairs and across the deck. As soon as we got to the first kitchen window, all the lights went out in the house. I got scared and turned around to face them when I heard him screaming. The power went out again and again. "What do we do?" I heard one say. Just go. As soon as we pass the second window, the power goes back on." We get in the house, run down to the lower level and yell at the friend who owns the place to get up. He wouldn't move, so I told him to go to bed. We didn't want to wake up the other guy because we didn't know him very well at the time and didn't want him to think we were weird. We get together in one of the rooms and are as shocked as can be. We look at each other and ask, "What the hell was he yelling about?" "I told you about something I saw." I go on to tell them exactly what I saw and that I wasn't around. We try to figure out what the hell we should do next and think about leaving and getting a hotel or just driving 4 hours south back home. We all felt like someone or something was out to get us. We've never been so scared before. We all love the outdoors and go on a big hiking and camping trip in the Upper Peninsula once a year, but we've never heard anything like that. So we could see outside. We decided to turn off all the lights and lock all the doors and windows. We all go to the left side of the house to the spare bedroom and look out the big window to see if we can see anything down below. At the top of the hill, we didn't see anything, but we did see something strange and unusual for this time of night in a neighborhood with mostly older people. A car with its hazard lights on was on the winding road behind the house down below, facing us. We all stare at it for 5 to 10 minutes and are wondering what it's doing. Did it see what I saw? Did what we heard happen here? Did it hit something? This is kind of a private road and neighborhood. So it was all very strange, especially since it was after 3 a.m. During quarantine 20 minutes away from town, it eventually turns its hazard lights off and does a U. This is also a very strange turn. Then it turns on its headlights and drives down the main road. We all agree that was one weird thing after another. Then we looked out the windows all night, but we didn't see anything. None of us went to sleep that night, and we continued to hear little noises as we were trying to get some shoot-eye, but those were probably out of paranoia when our other friends woke up. When we told them what happened to us, they just laughed and didn't seem to believe us. After that, we stayed there for 3 more nights, but they were all fine. Since then, I've been back to that place twice, and neither time was anything out of the ordinary. I can only say that I've never been so scared in my whole life. It felt like I was in a classic horror movie, and I thought I was going to die. P.S. The next day, we used Google and YouTube to find out what happened. All of the large animal noises we could think of, like moose a buck, a black bear act, but we couldn't compare it. One of the guys compared it to a car with a V8 engine, stepping all the way down on the gas pedal right next to his ear. That's how loud it seemed. The new guy didn't remember hearing the noise a couple days later, but remembered everything else. The rest of the trip, me and my other friend just thought it sounded like a monster. On our way back home, we all agreed that it was probably a bear. We did more research and realized the only bear in Michigan are black bears, then they only stand about 5 ft on their hind legs, plus the figure in which I saw looked more like a grey colour. Anyway, thanks for reading, and I'm sorry this was so long. Please share opinions. What do you think it could have been? It could have been a Sasquatch, a dog man from another planet, or a common woodland animal.